Messenger joins us each and every Tuesday and Thursday, and you read them all the time, stltoday.com. Good morning, Tony Messenger.
Good morning, McGraw. Good morning, Kelly. How's everybody
Tony.
doing?
All right, I don't want to laud you so you get embarrassed, but I think it is appropriate, pains me to say this as a friend of mine, that you were the one who broke this veterans home story, which credit goes to the people who tried to solve the problems, the elected officials who tried to go up the ladder, who couldn't get the governor's attention, and only after you wrote about it, and wrote about it significantly over weeks and months, and even after the governor sort of criticized other United States senators, only yesterday did he finally acknowledge what you have been writing about for months.
Well, and the important thing is that he did, and that there's now going to be change. I mean, the veterans in the United States deserve to be taken care of, and they deserve to be taken care of with the best care that we can provide and with dignity, and that hasn't been happening at the state-run St. Louis Veterans Home. And what's frustrating to me about what happened yesterday is not just that it took so long, but that even in coming around to doing the right thing, and what the governor did yesterday, to be clear, is three things. He replaced 5 members of the Missouri Veterans Commission. He suggested to them clearly that he believes they should fire the administrator or the director of the Missouri Veterans Commission, General Larry Kay, and the administrator of the Veterans Home in St. Louis, Rolando Carter. And then he also ordered investigations into every other veterans home in the state. There are 7 such homes. So what the governor did yesterday was significant. But even in doing it, he made it about him. He didn't make it about the veterans standing in front of the tank talking about how, he's been investigating this forever and has been on it. And the evidence is what the evidence is. A week ago, the lieutenant governor suggested that there be serious changes made. And, the families and the veterans that have been trying to get the governor's attention since February, many of whom are supporters of the governor, are people who campaigned with him and for him, they're frustrated. And the problem now is there is progress being made. So there are new Veterans Commission members. Eventually they're going to meet. I think it's quite likely that they will fire Larry Kay and possibly the other top administrators in the Missouri Veterans Commission, that they'll fire Rolando Carter. But here's the reality. There's more than 200 veterans living in the St. Louis Veterans Home right now. Because the management has been so bad, the staffing is completely underwhelmed. There are employees who work there who have been improperly put on leave and not allowed to work, social workers, nurses, RNs, etc., and people that have quit or been fired over the last 6 months who are long-standing employees who just couldn't take it anymore. So the process of improving the care is going to take a while. And in the meantime, there are elderly veterans living at that home who are likely going to die. I mean, that's the reality. That's what we're talking about. That's what my Wednesday column is about, a veteran named Roy Lee Davis who entered that home in 2016 in February, and by March was dead. And when he came in, he was healthy other than dementia and, typical problems an 86-year-old might have. And in 1 month's time, he went way downhill, way fast. So this is an urgent problem, and it can't just be one news conference. It's got to be taken care of, and it's got to be taken care of quickly. And then there's going to have to be follow-up to make sure that there's better employees, there's more employees, there's good staffing, there's good management, there's accountability. That's what the families want. The families want accountability. We trust you to take care of our men who fought for this country. Make sure that when we come to the home as family members to find out what's going on, we're treated with respect and dignity, and somebody tells us how our husbands and fathers and brothers and uncles are doing.
Facts are the facts, Tony. And at one point, first of all, no, everybody wants to take care of the veterans, right? Liberal, conservative, left, right, center, right? That's what we can all agree on. But it seems like in this country, we continue to not take care of the veterans. And why this story is so shocking is that the governor is a veteran. And it's good politics to show you're taking care of veterans, which is why this story is so confounding to me. He started a snark conversation with McCaskill and Blunt saying and quoting a report saying these veterans' homes got a great and stellar report from the state just a few weeks ago, right? So I don't understand. You were the one dogged on this, right? Forcing this story, making him pay attention to it. Am I correct in that a few weeks ago he was quoting a state report that said this veterans home was in tip-top shape?
Yeah, so remember the letter. So the letter, first came a letter from Senator Blunt and Senator McCaskill, a joint letter, pretty rare thing in today's political world, after my second column about what was going on up at the home. And they wrote a letter to the governor, very respectful letter. Governor, we all agree we should take care of our veterans. These families sure seem to have some serious complaints. We would ask you to do an outside investigation. And the governor's response said, hey, senators, good to hear from you. Wonder what you're doing in Washington. By the way, why don't you Google St. Louis Veterans Home and survey, and you'll find out I've already investigated it, and they said everything's fine. That's what his letter said. And what the governor did yesterday, without using the words, was admit that he was wrong. He wouldn't use the actual words himself to say that, but in his actions, he admitted, oh, yeah, that federal survey that he claims to have ordered that's actually an annual survey, he didn't order it. It's an annual survey. I've got all the annual surveys for the last several years. It wasn't an actual investigation. It was a whitewash. And when his head of Department of Public Safety, Drew Juden, allegedly investigated and came back and said there was nothing wrong, yeah, that wasn't an investigation either. Because if you read the summary report, all we have is an executive summary right now from the outside investigators, an outfit called Harmony Healthcare, I believe out of Indiana. It is devastating. I mean, everything that was in the 7 or 8 columns that I've previously written, that the family members were talking about, that the veterans were talking about, it's all in there, that the employees were talking about. It's devastatingly bad care. And it is proof that the previous investigations were whitewashes, were shams, were nothing. And so that's what's important to remember yesterday. When the governor said, there is this one quote, and I don't have it memorized, but in effect the governor said, when bureaucrats don't do their jobs, when they obfuscate, when they delay, when they come up with excuses, we have to hold them accountable. They need to be fired. That's what he said yesterday, and I would suggest, based on what's gone on since February, some folks need to perhaps apply that quote to the governor as well.
I also found it a bit ironic that in the same news conference, he calls out the Kansas City Star for the story about how some in his administration are using a text messaging app that deletes the text message so there's no record of this governmental conversation in the same news conference where the media forced him to acknowledge that the veterans weren't being taken care of.
It's hubris. It's arrogance. It's really interesting. If his name were Hillary Clinton, can you imagine how angry Republicans would be that the governor of Missouri was using a text app that erases his texts? This is a big deal. Listeners will remember that several years ago there was a major controversy in this state regarding emails when the administration of Governor Matt Blunt was refusing to release some emails and was claiming that some things didn't have to be maintained, etc. And multiple people took the governor to court, including the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and won. And there is 22 boxes of 60,000 emails from the Blunt administration sitting on the 3rd floor of the Post-Dispatch building as a result of that lawsuit. This is not a minor deal. Transparency in government is really important, whether your governor is a Democrat or a Republican, a Green, an independent, whatever he or she is, because that's how we determine what's going on. The reason that the family members and myself and other reporters were able to determine what's going on at the St. Louis Veterans Home is public records, is that sort of transparency. So the idea that the governor is just going to attack the media every time they find something about his administration that he thinks might get in the way of his future presidential run, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's the reason why a private server in a home in Chappaqua is a big deal. That's the same reason why using an app that erases text messages among governmental officials is a big deal. Tony, congratulations on calling him out. Good work on that veterans home. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Tony.